Shalom, it's Tahila from the Kifar with Hebrew Verb Lesson 31. And we are continuing with the Hifil Binyan, still in the present tense, and we are going to learn a third conjugation format using the verb to lower. But as always, before we do that, we're going to go over the exercise verbs from the last video. In the last video, we learned a second conjugation pattern using the verb lehavin, which is to understand. And this pattern is very similar, or this verb type is very similar to the regular verb type. Generally, what separates them is for the regular verb, there's a shva underneath the first letter of the root, whereas with this group, the A group, there isn't, okay? And that's a general rule. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it will get you to the right conjugation pattern 96.3% of the time, okay? So our first verb was lehavi, which is to bring. So get rid of the lamed and we are left with hevi, which is our root. So we replace the he with a mem and we get mevi for masculine singular. And then we have mevia for feminine singular. And then mevi'im for masculine plural. And mevi'ot for feminine plural. Okay, so we have the A sound in the masculine singular, and then it switches to the shva for the other three conjugations. The second verb was lehachin, which is to prepare or to make, like to make food. Get rid of the lamed, and we're left with hechin. So again, replacing that he with a mem, we go from hechin to the as the root to mechin for masculine singular, and then mechina for feminine singular, mechinim for masculine plural, and mechinot for feminine plural. If anything is unclear to you, look at lesson 30 and feel free to leave comments. And of course, you can come to the verbs practice session that I do every month. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So before we move on, I want to just again look at the two groups side by side. So we have our regular group with the verb lehargish as an example, and our A group with the verb lehavin as an example. So the infinitives sound somewhat similarly in terms of the vowel patterns. And so a general rule to determine whether you follow the regular pattern or whether you follow the A pattern is to see if there's a shava in the middle of the infinitive, generally underneath the first letter of the shoresh. As we see in lehargish, you have that shava that's underneath the resh, which is the first letter technically of our three-letter shoresh, whereas lehavin in the second group doesn't have it. Okay, so again, this is not a hard and fast rule. There are verbs that sound like they may belong in the A group, but they actually belong in the regular group. But generally speaking, the majority of the time, that will help you determine whether you conjugate it using the initial A sound of the regular group pattern or using the initial A sound of the A group. So looking at them again, in the regular group, we have lehargish, again, here's our shava. We have lehakshiv, again, the shava. Lehafria, again, the shava here. And in our second A group, lehavin, that means that the first vowel sound of the masculine singular is going to be A instead of A. So mevin, okay, whereas here we have margish, mevi, whereas here we have makshiv, and mechin, whereas here we have mafria. Okay, so that's the big difference. And you see that there's no shava underneath the root letters in any of the group 2 verbs. And we have group 3, which we are just gonna call our O vowels, okay, or our O group rather. So for both the regular and the group 2, we have an initial A sound, okay, like le hargish, le hakshiv, le havi, le hachin. Whereas for our O group, it starts with le ho, okay? So instead of le ha, as in group 1 and the group 2 verbs, this is just leho. And so we are going to use the verb lehorid, which is to lower or to put down, to illustrate this pattern, okay? And it's actually super simple. First step, as always, get rid of that lamed, and we're left with horid, okay? We're left with horid. And so all you're going to do for your masculine singular conjugation pattern is you're going to replace that ho with mo. Okay, so instead of horid, we have morid. And for feminine singular, it's going to be almost the same thing, but as always, our a at the end. Or not as always, but often when it comes to making masculine verbs feminine, we have an additional a sound. So morid, masculine singular, morida, feminine singular. Okay, so we go from OE to OEA. And then our masculine sound pattern, OEIM, and feminine O-E, ot. Okay, so morid, morida, moridim, and moridot. Morid, masculine singular, again, just going from horid to morid. Feminine singular, morida, masculine plural, moridim, and feminine plural, moridot. Okay? And again, a reminder before we get into looking at it again and giving you your exercise verbs, I do live Q&A and practice sessions. So even if you don't necessarily have questions about the verbs, but you want to practice using them, you want to mix up the different binyanim or look at roots that have infinitives across binyanim, all of that we cover in the live session. So check out Patreon, sign up, and I hope to see you in our session this month. Hu morid, masculine singular, so he lowers or he is lowering. He morida, so she puts down or she is putting down. Okay, the same meaning for the verb. Anachnu moridim, we lower or we are lowering. And hen moridot, okay, so they feminine, they put down or they are putting down. Okay, generally something or someone. So your exercises, as always, to use what you learn in this lesson to conjugate two additional verbs that fall into this category. So your first verb is lehosif, which is to add, and the second verb is lehovil, which is to lead. Okay, so lehosif and lehovil, and you see that they both start with that initial O sound instead of the A sound that we did in the first two groups. Toda ala tzfiya. Thank you for watching. Like this video, share it, subscribe to my channel, check out Patreon, and I will see you for the next video. Litraot.